Alright, YouTube. Time for another video. Still driving. Fucking around, I guess. We're in a parking lot. Kind of a rundown of shopping center. But there are some electric charging stations here. I think I want to talk about today is how young people give way too many fucks about politics now. And when I say young people, I mean like under the age of like 40. You can maybe even say people who don't have kids care way too much about politics. I've come to a sad realization that there's no amount of politics or anything that's or regulations or free markets that's really going to fix this problem about economy and kids' obsession with politics, because I think the problem is people spend too much time giving a fuck on the internet, and it's causing them to waste their day and their time. One of the things that I think is really funny is if you go back to even just like before high-speed internet, smartphone culture. I might have mentioned this in the past, but I don't recall young people ever giving a fuck about politics. It was viewed as lame. The only young people that did were like those guys who maybe they went to a public school in high school, but they still wore like a uniform because they wanted to be like some weird, I don't know, hipster, trendy weirdo. And it's just like, those were the only people that maybe cared. And most people kind of just laughed them off as like just people who are just, giving a fuck about something because they're bored or whatever. And I think young people need to care less about politics and care more about going out into the world and talking to people and meeting people, having fun. Doing things they like, trying new things. Politics, I remember when I was younger, my dad would watch the McLaughlin Group, which was like this, like, I think they were on PBS. Maybe they were on like a broadcast station. I didn't get cable TV until like I was a little bit older. I was born in 91, and it wasn't until, I want to say, we got cable TV in like 2003. And I remember my dad, when I was real young, late 90s, maybe early 2000s, he would watch like the McLaughlin Group. It was like all of the people there were old as shit. I kind of recall maybe a guy, what's his name, Tucker Carlson, who's like pretty relevant, I guess, now on the political talking point stage today. I remember him being on it, I think, but it was like mostly old fucks, like 65 plus year olds. I mean, I want to say the names I remember were John McLaughlin, who was named after the program, or he was the host and kind of like but he would also give his opinions on things. In fact, he kind of monopolized the last word. He would always say the last thing, if I recall. So he wasn't really a host. He was still like giving opinions and then like putting the hammer down. It was kind of narcissistic. There was a woman who I guess was maybe like she was like neoliberal. I think her name was Eleanor or Eleanor something. There was a guy who looked like a mobster, and I remember his name. It was Tony Blankley, and he I'm pretty sure he was actually kind of younger, but he was like, somebody who ate too many cheeseburgers, and I'm pretty sure that guy died of a heart attack. Pat Buchanan, who's he might be dead now, I don't know, but I remember him being on the program. And it was just these old fucks. And like the youngest person there, again, I think Tucker Carlson was on the program, but he was like a guest. He wasn't like a regular. He was like a guest panelist most of the time. He would have been probably late 30s, I guess. And because he's probably in his mid 50s now. And other than that, like everyone else on that program, if I recall, was like 50 something, if not 60. And John McLaughlin was maybe in his late 70s or maybe 80s. I don't know, maybe when he died. And you would never see on any of these political shows like younger people. Younger people were too busy, even if they were, wow, just like the sun just like officially set. Just like got 2 tints darker in like a blink of an eye. But younger people would be too busy kind of like going out and doing stuff, things just, they would be socializing at the mall or socializing at the movie theater, or if maybe they would go to a public library or even things just like the basketball court or the gym. The gym culture was more social back in the day from what all the workout, the older people, the late 40 somethings of today who still hardcore lift. They always talk to me. Oh, no, wait, maybe the light got a little bit lighter. But yeah, the late 40 somethings who still work out. I mean, they talk about gyms, not really the same gym I work out at because it's only been around since like 05, but the gyms that you would talk about, 90s culture was a little bit more louder in there with like music, but it was also people were talking and kind of keeping up with each other more, and it felt a little more camaraderie, and that's the type of stuff that we need to do. A lot of the older gym people always talk to me and they say I'm like they remind me of like the old days, because they can tell like I'm not hardcore about, watching every YouTube video from a fitness influencer, and they can tell I'm not on really any juice other than pre-workouts and creatines and, protein powders, things that have been around for a hot minute. I guess creatine was like late 90s when that started to get popular. People thought it was a steroid at first. Fucking stupid. But it's like your body, you literally, when you eat meat, you have creatine. But I just remember, people would talk about how, people were doing stuff. I always bring up malls. I think, some people say online shopping killed the mall, and, probably contributed, but I don't know. I mean, malls in Europe supposedly are doing well, and it's like they have online shopping, It's like that's not nothing new. Oh, those girls are kind of cute. They're probably like, God, I hope they look like they're in college. Yeah, they're probably like mid-20s. Okay, good. But I just see people and young people, and they're just so, it's all about just political, and it's okay to like kind of care about things and maybe have an opinion, but that shouldn't be priority one. Priority one should be developing relationships, whether it's platonic friends, romantic partners, even people, just like connections for if they're trying to find a job down the line. All those things are important to have, not just one, not just two, but all three. Probably some other forms of relationships too. But, and most importantly, just socializing and developing, trying new things, hobbies, skills, you name it. And I see none of that, man. I don't see any of it. I mean, it's still around, I guess. I'm being a little bit over the top, but I do think that it's just severely lacking in younger people. It's probably even worse for the Zoomer crowd. I mean, I'm a middle late millennial. Like if you divide millennials into halves, I'm in the younger half. If you divide it into thirds, I'm like in the middle third. Late middle third, like the millennials would be like 81 to like 86, then like 87 to 92, and then 93 to 98 or whatever. And I'm 91, so I'm like that later not quite middle millennial, not like pure, like 89. I think Taylor Swift should go down as like the quintessential millennial. She's born in the like 89, and that's probably the midpoint, at least, years. And she's apparently Time Person of the Year, which makes no fucking sense to me, but a lot of women of aged, I mean, a lot of girls younger than 18 and women as old as like 40 something love that one, the Taylor Swift. It's kind of weird, but she's, not harming nobody, I guess, so who cares? Um, but yeah, I think that younger people need to stop giving this many fucks. It's like, obviously, exercise your right to vote, have an opinion on some things, care about your environment, don't just throw shit on the floor, and, maybe watch how much you consume, a little bit. There's nothing wrong with stuff like that. I don't consider that a political statement, but that's not really the extent most people take this shit. Most people are non-stop. Everything is a political issue to them. Um, and it is getting a little out of hand. Um, I do think that people need to like kind of observe, that life is more important than just some weird, political battle, and that's never going to end. And even if it does, even if some sort of legislation gets passed to what you want, you're going to feel incomplete inside because you've spent all this time, I actually know some traditional conservative Christian types who deep down inside they've said even things like they fear if they made abortion illegal, which, I'm actually pro-abortion. I'm pro-choice, at least legally. I don't know if it should be publicly funded, but I do think it should be available and legal to do. Um, but I will say, you meet I've met a few Christians who even say things like how they're afraid that if they made abortion illegal, that they feel like a large chunk of voters would no longer show up. They feel like they would lose a purpose in life because they've been advocating for anti-abortion measures for so long. And I'm like, so you don't want your goal accomplished? I mean, I don't agree with your goal, but you don't want it accomplished? I mean, that's kind of weird. Um, but I think that it's people are just hyper obsessed with politics, and not everything has to be this humongous political battlefield. And younger people are making it, I remember when I was in middle school, a lot of classes I had, the teacher would say, please, learn politics and be politically active and be a young person who wants to see change and advocate. And it's like, first of all, I was like 13 at the time. Yeah, it went dark again. I was like 13 at the time, and I can't vote for another 5 years anyway. And no one's going to listen to like some 13, 14-year-old kid like, we want single payer health care. Like, they're going to be like, what do you, like, shut up, kid. That's what they're going to say. Or they're just going to, or the people who support you are going to just pat you on the head and, oh, look at the cutie or whatever. They're not going to be taken seriously, is the point. And maybe when you reach your early 20s, you can maybe be taken seriously politically, but even then, you still just, it's like you're better off just trying new things and developing things you like to do. I mean, life is getting more expensive by the day, and that would even include pursuit of hobbies. I acknowledge that, but there's things there's a lot of information that's available for whatever your monthly internet bill is that really doesn't require that much more than that, the monthly internet bill, and maybe like to buy a notebook and some mechanical pencils to like learn something or do if it's learning a certain academic field, you could still teach yourself, certain math or something, or I mean, most people should still be able to like, be able to rummage a couple, $120 to buy an electronic keyboard, or maybe like $200 to buy an electronic keyboard, a seat, and some music, and try to teach yourself the piano or something, or or share, or find a private lesson that's not too expensive. I mean, there is still, most people should still be able to afford those things. I mean, I think that's not, hasn't been completely destroyed. And also, I think just socializing in the outside world is still relatively cheap. I mean, go be a mall rat at a dying mall or something and just walk around and try to meet people there, or bring a couple of friends and, window shop and chill, Nobody really does anything like that anymore. I don't see a lot. I mean, I don't see any younger people doing that. Yeah, I mean, younger people, I mean, nobody watches these videos anyway. Who cares? But, I think the question is like, was politics better when young people weren't involved as much? I mean, maybe you could say your voice wasn't being heard as much, which might upset you, but if you were having fun doing other stuff, isn't that more important? Is there a way people can juggle both? You can be this politically active, insano person who has political opinions about everything, and everything you do is a political issue, but you're still having fun. Is that it? But you're still having fun doing stuff. Is that a balance that is able to be struck? I mean, I've yet to meet anybody who's, I know more young people than ever who are hardcore politically active, and none of them are really happy. And you could say, well, they're so unhappy because their political vision isn't being seen. Well, everybody's, I mean, you talk to some right winger, they say we're too far left. You talk to some left winger, they say we're too far right. So it's like, is nobody views the country as heading in the right direction. Moderates are viewed as pussies, and it's just like nobody views the world as heading. And again, I even actually think there are problems that this country's making worse. Like I am pretty a big advocate of climate change. I do think there's a large chunk of, you still see kind of like these gas guzzling SUVs on the road. I'm not a big fan of them. I do see more and more people not trying to, do the basic of recycling, which, some people say recycling's bullshit, but, at least I'm, you know, washing the plastic bottles out and putting them in a bin that in theory I think I'm at least doing my part, or it makes you feel kind of good that you're trying or making the attempt. Could all be for naught, I guess, but I don't necessarily think that's the case. So I am actually a pretty big advocate for, like, energy consumption limitation, and I don't consume a lot of excess energy myself. I try very hard not to. But at the same time, it's like I'd be happier if I had more, there were hobbies that had a potentially larger base of people who, after maybe they do said hobby that night, they still want to go out and get something to eat and socialize and chit chat, and might lead to, you know, friends to have mini vacations with, or a girl to date or something. I don't know. So yeah, let me know what you think. Or is politics better off when it wasn't as infested with younger people, or are we better off with more young people in politics? And I'm just a hater because I don't find other things to like. But I will say again, does anybody know people who are hardcore political active especially young people? Do you know anybody who's very, very politically active and they have a lot of opinions and they have a lot of things that they advocate for? And are out of those, I know more people than ever like that, but the question I ask is, are any of those people, if you know them, or if it's even you, are you happy? Does this make you feel good inside living this life? Do you have hobbies that are, separate somewhat from your political life, which is apparently very we're talking about people whose political life is very prominent because it's always on their mind. So yeah, the people who are very, very politically active, are you happy? And also, was politics better when we had younger people out not really doing it and doing other stuff? Anyway, just my thoughts, and I'm out.